Hey everybody, my name is Zimmerman and I'm the Rector of St. Alban's Episcopal Church in Waco, Texas. I am a pastor of a church that is in the Episcopal tradition. That means we worship liturgically, it means that we are sacramental, and it means that we have no idea what we're doing with live streaming and online services. My megachurch brothers and sisters have been doing this for years. You're great at this, and we're perfectly poised to pivot to the all online worship reality in which we're now living. That is not the case for those of us that are in the Orthodox, Episcopal, Roman Catholic, Lutheran, or any other of these liturgical traditions. So we've been figuring it out, and each week getting a little bit better. We are by no means experts, but I figured some stuff out, and I wish somebody had told me this 6 weeks ago. So I'm sharing it with you, and I hope you'll find it helpful. These are Aaron Zimmerman's tips and tricks for online liturgical worship. The first part is just going to talk about the context and the medium, and then the second part of this video is going to talk about the actual practical tips that I think are important. First thing, liturgy on a screen is really different from liturgy in person. Liturgy in person makes you feel connected to a wider community of people. Liturgy on a screen can make you feel bored. It feels distant and rigid and formal, or it can. So just be aware that things that work in person might not work as well on screen. Ask yourself, what is this service for? Is it to provide a shot-for-shot perfect reproduction of what you used to do on Sunday? Or is it something that allows you to ask, are we doing something online that will help people feel connected in a time of isolation? Something that will help them know what the gospel means in a time of pandemic. Second thing to remember, people are at home. They are not going through the normal Sunday morning routines of getting up, getting dressed, maybe trying to get the kids ready, get out the door, find a parking spot, greet an usher, and then go into church where you're greeted by beautiful architecture, maybe a sublime prelude, seeing people you know and love, and having your whole mind and body prepared to worship. Instead, most of your folks are getting up, rolling out of bed, tuning in 5 minutes late. So know that you'll have to help people enter that time of worship. Number 3, there is no congregation. There are things that feel normal to do in a large group of people that by yourself would feel silly. For example, the wave. To do this by yourself feels a little weird. But to do it in a stadium of 20,000 people, totally normal. Same thing in liturgy. Chanting a psalm by yourself at home feels a little awkward. But to do it in a church of 100 people, not so bad. And plus, if you're not doing it right, everybody else's voices will drown out your mistakes. So just remember that there's no congregation, and things that felt normal in church might feel awkward at home. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you feel weird if you were doing this at home with your kids next to you? If so, maybe think about whether or not you want to ask your congregation to do it. Fourth, the brain likes variety. One long, wide-angle shot of your church is not going to be that interesting for a long period of time. There's a reason why all the shows you watch have quick editing cuts and don't stay on one thing for too long of a time. You'll have a hard time holding your people's attention if it's just one camera shot the whole time. Fifth, this medium tends to be more passive and less participatory. As I said before, driving to church on a Sunday morning, entering the building, sitting down, hearing the music, all that primes you, along with the sitting and the standing and the kneeling, primes you to worship. Go into your living room and sit down on your couch with a cup of coffee and your phone in your hand for a live stream worship service. All the signals around you, all the cues are telling your brain this is a passive, watching TV type of experience. So if you want people to engage and participate, you have to really clearly ask them to do so verbally and intentionally. Number 6, close-up, not wide angle. A wide angle shot, again, you might want to have some of those in your broadcast. What really connects and works on live stream is close-up. If you're going to watch YouTube videos, if you're going to see Facebook Live stuff from people that are drawing lots and lots of people, usually it's a close-up of their face because that's what's engaging, that's what's interesting. When you're scrolling through your Facebook feed, where you tend to stop is when you see the face of a person. Now on to the practical tips. Number 1, use an app like Switcher. This is one I stumbled upon just doing some internet research. It had a free trial, so I signed up. It lets me do things like show multiple camera angles. It lets me put a little bit of text at the bottom of the screen or do a side-by-side shot showing the prayer that we're saying together along with the face of the person that's leading. It lets me add pre-recorded videos to the service. So when we had our bishop visit the second Sunday of Easter, she was able to record that on her home iPhone, send that to us, and then we were able to show that as the sermon for Sunday morning. The cool thing about Switcher is that it lets you use iOS devices, iPhones or iPads, as your cameras. When this whole live streaming thing started, we did not have a bunch of fancy digital cameras that we could use to live stream our service, but we all had iPhones in our pockets. You use a central iPad to control switcher, and then you set up iPhones around the church. You can lean them against a pile of hymnals if you like, or get a tripod, and you'll be able to have different camera angles. It also lets you show what's on the screen of a MacBook to your congregation. It's a really simple, easy to use tool, and it's been a huge help to us. They are not paying me, no promotional consideration. Number 2, start with a personal welcome. In church, when we stand up in a liturgical setting, we usually begin with something like an opening sentence of scripture or a phrase like, "The Lord be with you," and people notice say, "and also with you." It's formal, and that's appropriate to that setting. But when you've had people, again, without all those cues to get them ready for worship, and maybe people that are joining, we hope, who are not familiar with your tradition, because now we have such a wider reach via the internet, you want to make sure you have a personal, warm, 10-second welcome just to help people know how they can follow along, what the flow of the service is going to be like, how long it might last, and what they need in order to participate. Number 3, speaking of participation, make it as easy as possible. Not all of your congregation are going to have hymnals, prayer books, missals, other things like that at home to follow along. And again, if you're bringing in new people, not all those folks will have the service memorized. So you need to have a bulletin prepared that has all the responses and the readings in it. Now, we put a PDF of this online, and for the first few weeks, we asked people to print that out or look at it on another screen. This is a good option, but it's not the best. It's not the best because some people don't have printers. They might have a printer that's out of ink. It takes a lot of paper to print a full bulletin. The other thing is, if they're watching it on the second screen, it means they've got the service here and the bulletin here, and they kind of have to look back and forth, or maybe share with a spouse or family member, and it just pulls people out of the experience you're trying to create. So if you can put the bulletin on the screen side by side, or put responses at the bottom of the screen, that makes it easier for people to participate. Just like in person, you want people to feel welcome and able to follow along, same thing online. 4th, keep it short. I think 30 minutes is the ideal. We're not there yet. We're continuing to try to trim it. People are at home, their kids have limited attention spans, and so do they. It'd be wonderful if you could hold people's attention for an hour, but unless you're J.J. Abrams, you're probably not going to be able to do that. Feel free to go from 3 readings to 2 or to 1. Cut verses of hymns. You don't need to do all 500 verses of St. Patrick's breastplate. Omit optional prayers. You're not trying to recreate a shot-for-shot perfect reproduction of Sunday morning. You're trying to have something that helps people connect to your church, to each other, and to God. 5th, preach, but don't be preachery. It's so important to have a sermon when you're doing an online service. It's one of the best ways for people to feel connected to you. So preach to them, but don't be preachery. This means, I think, in online worship, standing in a pulpit and speaking very formally is not going to be as effective. This medium allows you to feel like you're talking to people one-on-one. Think more like TED Talk or Fireside Chat or Bible study than a sermon. Number 6, think outside the box. There are things you can now do that you couldn't do before, and there's some creative possibilities that this opens up for you. Like I've said, we have pre-recorded videos of sermons of our lay readers and incorporated them into the service. I've seen other churches where somebody photobombs the speaker, and it actually becomes one of the most endearing and connecting parts of the service, even a pet walking in on screen. So you can have some fun with captions, some creative things you can do with props. I'm not talking about some sort of corny, tacky thing, but just know that you have some freedom to have some fun in how you connect with people, because God has brought us to this place of live stream or online worship. Number 7, use this time to teach. One of the opportunities this new medium affords us is the ability to pause in the middle of the liturgy, again, because you don't have 50, 150, 200 people in church where an interruption to teach would be weird. You're speaking to people in their homes, and if there's some new prayer or some new service, or you've moved from Eucharist to morning prayer and they're not familiar with it, you can use time in that service to teach what we're doing and why we're doing it. Number 8, show, don't tell, or don't just tell. If you're trying to explain to people that they can make a donation online, if you're using an app like Switcher, you can show them a screenshot of what your website looks like and where the button is to click to make an online donation. If you're telling people to subscribe or follow you on your social media, put that on the bottom of the screen so people know what to do. So don't just tell people, show them how to do it, and you'll see a wonderful response. 9, music is really important. If you can incorporate it in some way, your people will be blessed. This is something that folks really miss and are longing for. And if you can have your organist come in and play a song, or maybe go in before the service on Sunday and record something that then you can incorporate into your service, people will really be grateful for it. We had a church member record an anthem for Good Friday and send it to us via email, and we put it into our Good Friday broadcast, and people found it one of the most meaningful parts of that service. And if you don't have a big choir, an organ, one of the great things about an app like Switcher is if you have a video of a really great performance of a work of sacred music, you can simply show that as part of your service. Number 10, play the hits. Make sure this is familiar music. You want to pick the hymns that people already have memorized and don't need a hymnal for. People already have a lot of stress and change in their lives. Hold off on teaching new hymns for now. 2 more little tips. The first is what's in the background. So we had a service early on of live streaming where we had a visible extension cord throughout the entire service. It didn't totally destroy the service, but it was a little distracting, and it would have been an easy thing to change before the service if we had just checked. Also, know who's behind you. Because of the depth of field of these iPhone cameras, they will be very clear, not sort of blurry and in the background. It'll look like you have a tiny person just over your shoulder. Also makes that person have to be really careful about yawning, sneezing, or being distracting in any way. It's not comfortable for them. It looks weird for you if you're the preacher. So just make sure you've moved extraneous people out of the background. Second little tidbit, have one dedicated responder. In our liturgical setting, we have things kind of in a call and response format. The Lord be with you and also with you. If you are just solo, I would omit some of those things if you can. You can just begin with a let us pray. But if you do have some people with you in the service, and if you are able to broadcast from your church, if there are responses, I encourage you to pick one person to be the responder and to do so in a loud and audible voice. Because what can happen is if you have 3 or 4 people in there, when you say the Lord be with you, your viewers will hear each 3 of those people say the response at slightly different times and kind of muffled and far away. It just doesn't work as well. So have one person be your clear and audible responder. Well, that's our guide to live stream and online worship for liturgical churches. I hope this has been helpful to you. God bless you as we build this plane while we're flying, and may God bless your congregations. Thanks for watching.